Right now, solar farms and solar arrays are being turned off all over the world. They're working, nothing wrong with them, but almost every day they are being turned off. Here's why. Hello my friends, welcome to the channel. You're watching the Electric Viking. It's great to see you. I'm Sam Evans, and this is a phenomenon that is affecting a huge percentage of the world. Now this is very, very common, and it's often not reported on, but the truth is solar farms, and not just solar farms, but solar arrays, even solar panels on people's houses, they're being turned off when the sun is shining, literally during the middle of the day. Now, a lot of you might have heard of this, but I don't think many people have. Markets aren't nearly as efficient as they are cracked up to be. Our housing market focuses on building holiday homes for the holiday homeless rather than actual houses for actually homeless. The newdaily.com.au says that our supermarkets send tens of thousands of tons of fresh produce to the trash every year, rather than offer it to consumers at low prices. And our electricity market currently requires solar farms to be switched off in the middle of the day. They call it curtail them, while our governments invent new ways to subsidize gas and coal-fired power stations to keep operating. Despite the fact that climate change is caused by what economists call market failure, we are often told in Australia that market forces are the best way to fix market failure. It's not quite working that way. There's absolutely no chance that market forces will fix the market failure of climate change, if only because our so-called national electricity market here in Australia is in fact no such thing. Rather, the NEM, the National Electricity Market, is a government creation of over 1,000 pages of administrative rules and regulations that are so poorly designed that switching off solar farms when the sun is shining brightest is considered efficient. Now, this did used to happen in California though, to be fair. Not so much anymore though. California's found a way to solve this. It's hard to think of a less efficient thing to do with the billions of dollars worth of solar farms than to switch them off when it's sunniest. Not only are we saying no to lots of low-cost renewable electricity, but we're also reducing the profits earned by those who have invested in renewables when we are supposed to encourage rapid investment in renewables. Welcome to the topsy-turvy land of Australia's energy policy. Richard Dennis says that you might think that the electricity industry would be up in arms about this, but the motives of the big players in our electricity market aren't complicated. Just as property developers don't want to flood the property market with lots of houses, it would lower their prices and profits, and supermarkets don't want to flood the market with lots of fruit and veggies. The owners of fossil fuel power plants don't want to flood the market with lots of low-cost renewable energy. The coal and gas-fired power stations making peak profits by selling electricity at peak prices in the late afternoon when electricity demand peaks are in no rush to stop the waste of solar capacity in the middle of the day. Now, you might have heard recently the energy market has completely transformed in California recently, and the key reason is because all that solar is no longer being wasted. It's being stored in batteries now and then used as the primary energy source in these peak periods that I'm referencing. That said, back in the 70s and 80s, he says, when we had far more coal-fired electricity than we knew what to do with during the middle of the night, it was the government, not the market, that fixed the problem by requiring off-peak hot water systems in millions of homes, investing in pump hydro and street lighting, and even encouraging CBD office towers to leave their lights on all night. So what can we do to actually fix this problem of having to turn off renewable electricity and wasting it in the middle of the day? It's easy to see all the lights on in an empty CBD office at night. It's hard to imagine how simple it would be for big commercial and industrial buildings to make small changes to the way they use their air conditioning that would have huge consequences for the cost, carbon content, and reliability of our electricity system. Put simply, buildings are major users of electricity in Australia and all over the world. And if we can make small changes to when they use electricity, we can have a big impact on whether we can rely on solar rather than coal and gas. Now, Richard Dennis says that according to a recent research paper based on real-world data from large commercial buildings have enormous potential to act as thermal batteries by simply making slight changes to the temperature settings for their air conditioners. Because modern commercial buildings take a long time to heat up or cool down, it's possible using just the software and hardware that's already in place to shift a large amount of electricity use away from the afternoon peak in demand and towards the midday glut in solar supply. Pump that electricity during the midday glut when there's more sun, more power than we need, and then turn it off or turn it down lower later in the day. It's actually a pretty simple solution. Indeed, in a real-world trial, a major building in Sydney shifted 800 kilowatt hours of electricity demand from late afternoon to the middle of the day by simply lowering the air conditioning target temperature by 1 degree, only a single degree, early in the day. A battery big enough to shift that much electricity would cost $500,000. Now, this is a single building. Imagine if they did that to every building in the world. Similarly, small changes in the electricity market rules could give buildings much greater incentives to utilize other forms of energy storage and interact with the grid far more efficiently. Basically, Richard is saying, an office building acts in some ways almost like a big battery. In theory, if you cool the air down, say in that solar peak during the middle of the day with 10 o'clock, 11 a.m., 12 p.m., cool the building down, then later on in the day, you can essentially, have that air conditioning, which is costing massive amounts of money, turned down lower to the point where you're not using it as much. Reducing Australia's emissions will require lots of policies aimed at lots of things. Now, it's true that solar is being turned off in many places around the world. In Adelaide, there's been some days where the government regulators have gone around and turned solar off all over the state because there's too much solar being generated, and this is actually a common phenomenon. But whilst this phenomenon is a problem, one of the big things that solves it is huge batteries, or at least energy storage. And lithium-ion batteries, they are clearly solving this challenge in California. As more and more of these big batteries are installed in Australia, this will help us to solve this problem. It will help us to stop wasting so much incredibly cheap solar electricity created during that middle peak. Still, it's hard, says Richard, to imagine an easier way to rapidly reduce emissions at a low cost than to stop turning our solar farms off when the sun is shining. But markets chase profits, not efficiency, which is why our governments need to step in and change the rules and the ratings used to incentivize and evaluate the way buildings use energy. Reducing Australia's emissions will require lots of policies aimed at lots of things, but it's hard to imagine an easier way to rapidly reduce emissions at a low cost than to stop turning our solar farms off when the sun is shining. Now, it is an unfortunate economic reality that they're being turned off in Australia very frequently now. However, there are some very, very large batteries which are going to come online and be connected to the Australian grid over the next 24 months. That will definitely help to absorb a lot of this solar. That said, I agree with Richard, we need some policy change which will encourage businesses to change the way they do things. Now, if businesses, like he said, just turn their air conditioning down by 1 degree during that peak period and then turn it up by 1 degree during that evening peak, then this would pretty much enable massive amounts of solar to not be wasted during the middle of the day. What do you guys think? Good solution or not? Thanks for watching.